Welcome everyone to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, neighbors, really anyone who's caring for someone else. My name is Katie Muirhead and I will be your moderator for today. And before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that we're on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. Today, I'm joining you from the city of St. Catharines, which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous peoples. If you'd like to learn more about the lands that you're joining from, you can find out more at native-land.ca. As a caregiver, your days are filled with endless tasks. From helping with daily activities to managing medications, creating a safe environment, and so much more. However, one of the most significant risks for older adults, and one that can largely be prevented, is falling. Joining us today is Claire Westmacott and Stephanie Cowell from Parachute, Canada's injury prevention charity. They'll discuss tools and strategies to protect older adults from falling and take a first look at the new Caregiver's Guide to Fall Prevention. Claire is the manager of knowledge translation and programs at Parachute and has worked in the nonprofit and public health sector for over a decade. She's experienced in knowledge mobilization, applied research and program management, delivery, and evaluation. She's passionate about health equity and environmental health and enjoys collaborating with partners across Canada to develop evidence-based solutions that advocate and educate. Stephanie is the Director of Knowledge Exchange at Parachute, leading the analysis and synthesis of research to develop the organization's evidence-based solutions that advocate and educate. Stephanie's experience includes working with government, health, sport, and education stakeholders at a national and provincial level. She's led the publication of Canada's first guideline on concussion in sport. So I want to welcome Claire and Stephanie and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you everyone at the Ontario Caregiver Organization for organizing this event and for inviting us here today, and to all of you for attending. As Katie said, we know it's difficult to get away, so we really appreciate you showing up today to learn more. So as Katie said, my name is Claire. I'm joined today by my colleague Stephanie, and we're going to be talking today about a new resource that Parachute has just launched, which is called the Caregiver's Guide to Fall Prevention. So quickly, we would love to extend a thank you to our funders and partners for this work. This project was supported by the Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation, and we are so grateful to our project partners in this work, which includes several caregiving organizations, including the Ontario Caregiver Organization, Family Caregivers of British Columbia, and a national organization called Caregiving Matters. We are also incredibly grateful to the caregivers who participated in this project as well. We had some incredibly dedicated, thoughtful, and experienced contributions from two caregivers, Kathy Ford and Veronica Salvati. We also had contributions from many caregivers across Canada who provided their feedback, their stories, and their experiences, all of which have immensely shaped this guide into what it is and have influenced this project. So we are really grateful to everyone who participated in this work and made this guide into what it is. So before I get into my presentation, I wanted to share a little bit more about Parachute. Parachute is Canada's national injury prevention charity, and we are focused on preventing serious and fatal injuries. We envision a future free of serious injuries with people in Canada living long lives to the fullest. At Parachute, our team, we really act as a bridge between research and evidence to action and real world solutions. We work very collaboratively with lots of different types of partners, including government, public health, nonprofits such as the Ontario Caregiver Organization, and others to really drive evidence informed solutions that prevent injuries and reduce their impact. And in many ways, we connect to caregivers of children and youth, as well as those caring for older adults and adults themselves. And we provide a lot of different types of information on how to assess risks and hazards and how to prevent injuries across, road safety, at home and in your community as well. So, as an organization, we really have four different areas of priority for our organization. We cover lots and lots of different injury prevention, injury issues, but as an organization, we really follow the evidence and we focus on four priority issues, which include falls, motor vehicle collisions, poisoning, and incidents in sports and recreational activities with a focus on concussion. And today, obviously, our focus is all about falls. So, falls are the number one cause of injury for seniors in Canada, and they can lead to broken bones, hospital stays, and long recovery times. Ultimately, they can also make it harder for people to live independently in the ways that they want. And preventing even just one fall can really make a huge difference in staying strong and healthy. Falls can also have a huge impact on caregivers. A fall can be what leads someone to unexpectedly become a caregiver. For many caregivers, a fall can change and increase the type of care required. And many caregivers, you here attending today, many caregivers, you may be older adults yourselves or nearing that age bracket. And so fall prevention is something that many of us are concerned about. And, we really need to be mindful of the risk of sustaining an injury from a fall, which can add a lot of complexity and stress as a caregiver. So today, what we're going to focus on is how falls happen, practical tips for preventing falls, some guidance around what to do if a fall happens, and how you as a caregiver can help the person you care for if they do fall. And then we're going to talk about our new resource, which is the Caregiver's Guide to Fall Prevention, which puts together all of the information and more that we're going to be talking about today. So, when we talk about fall prevention, it's important to first recognize that the reasons people fall can be incredibly complex, and there are situations where not every fall can be prevented. And this is by no means a failure. This in many ways is just a reality. Caregivers are superheroes in many ways, and the reality is that no one has figured out how to prevent every single fall from happening. Particularly for caregivers caring for people with conditions like Parkinson's, where falls can be frequent. We know that falls can be part of, a monthly or weekly routine. And what we really want to focus on is trying our best to prevent falls with the tools and information and the resources that we have to prevent falls as best we can. And there are many simple, practical changes that we can make in our lives to make this happen. As caregivers, you play such an essential role in improving the quality of life for the person you care for, and you can help the person you care for reduce the number of falls and prevent injuries from falls. And that's really what we're going to focus on today. Caregivers are also, important advocates. Falling is not a normal part of aging, and it's important to take falls when they do happen, to take them really seriously, and to take fall prevention seriously as well. Because we know that taking steps to prevent falls can really help people continue to age where and how they wish for as long as possible. And it also eases your burden as a caregiver as well. So let's talk first about how falls happen. Most falls happen at home. They can also happen outside, such as on front doorsteps or an icy driveway, especially this winter, or while out and about in the community as well. The top types of falls that lead to serious injuries in seniors include slipping, tripping, and stumbling. So, for example, on a loose rug in your living room or trying to step up on a curb outside. Falls from furniture are also frequent. So, for example, falling out of bed or getting in or out of a chair. Falls on stairs are also common. And then falls in the bathroom, especially in the shower or the bathtub. The bathroom is a really common place where people fall, and it's pretty easy to understand why. You're introducing water, there's a lot of slippery tile. If you wear glasses, often that's a place where you take them off. So there's some high risk to the bathroom area when it comes to falls as well. And it's important to also consider why falls happen. So, the reasons that make someone more likely to fall are known as risk factors. And risk factors for falls include certain things like older age, mobility, balance, and strength issues, certain health conditions. So, as I mentioned, something like Parkinson's, arthritis, or cognitive impairment as well are a few other examples. Taking multiple medications or taking medications that have certain side effects, such as dizziness, drowsiness, balance issues, those can also increase fall risk, as well as hazards in the home. So if we think about uneven steps or a stairway without handrails or rugs that can be easily tripped on. So, when we think about risk factors, the more risk factors that somebody has, the more likely they are to fall. And some of these factors can be changed. We can look at hazards in the home and make those simple changes. But some factors, such as our age and long-term health conditions, they can't be changed. So, today we're going to talk a lot about some practical tips for preventing falls, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Stephanie to walk us through some of the tips and strategies that we're going to share today.
Hi, everyone. Claire's shared the importance of falls, how common they are, and what's really important for you to know as well is that there is lots of good information available about how we prevent falls or injuries from falls. And so the tips that we're going to share with you today, we want you to know that these are based on research. They are proven to be effective. And it's really important that we get this information out to people who can use it. There are many things we can do to prevent falls in lots of different areas, such as thinking about how much we are physically active and building balance and strength, staying hydrated, managing health conditions, and staying connected with others in our lives. Today, for this presentation, we are going to focus on 5 key areas. These are eye health and vision, hearing health, footwear, medications, and home modifications. And the tips we'll share today are available in the guide. We'll share more information on that in a bit. So at this point, we invite you to listen and take away from this what you can and what works for you today. So for each section, we're going to talk a little bit about why this matters. We want to share with you why this aspect has a connection to falls and fall prevention, and then a few very practical things that you in a role as a caregiver might be able to help with. So when it comes to eye health and vision, changes in vision can increase a person's risk of falling, primarily because it makes it more challenging for them to safely move around their environment. When we can't see well, there are things in our environment, there's obstacles, there's things around us that we are unaware of. It can be tougher to judge the distance that things are away from us, and so our likelihood of tripping and falling increases. So, what could you as a caregiver do to focus in on this area and help with fall prevention? So, the first thing you can do is encourage the person you care for to visit an optometrist once a year to check in on their eye health and any prescriptions if they have them. Another thing that's possible for you to do is encourage the person you care for to talk to their optometrist about multifocal lens use. Now, this of course applies if they use multifocal or progressive lenses. Why is this important? It may be appropriate for them to actually switch to single lenses. Um, the way that multifocal or progressive lenses work is the bottom half of the lens is meant to help you focus on things that are closer up. This is important for reading and other things. However, as you're walking around your environment, those lenses won't help you see things that are farther away and underneath you. So, say you're walking and you're approaching a curb or approaching something that's laying on the floor in your home. With multifocal lenses, that area of your vision can be blurry, and thus it can create a risk. So it's something to talk to the optometrist about potentially creating a change. We can also help look for changes in vision that may indicate that something's going on and that assistance is needed. There are physical signs as well as certain behaviors people might start doing that can help that we may sort of raise our antenna and want to look into further to see what's going on. So this can be things like squinting, new or worsened sensitivity to light, taking a lot of time to adjust between lighter and darker settings, such as coming inside the house when it's bright outside, eyes that are getting drier or excessively watery, becoming clumsy or misjudging where objects are. So starting to maybe bump into things more, the corner of the counter, the corner of the bed. These little signs can mean something's going on. And then, if the person you care for is currently driving, you may notice driving mistakes, such as missing stop signs or having more problems seeing at night. So, watching for these changes might be a first sign that we need to look into things a little further. Another thing that is possible to help with is improving lighting in a person's home. There are different ways this could be accomplished, such as increasing the wattage of light bulbs that are used, using night lights in hallways. We've heard from caregivers that motion sensor lights have been really helpful in their homes or their care recipients' home. So next we'll move on to hearing health. And just like vision, hearing is one of the senses that gives us a lot of information about what's happening in the world around us that helps us move through it safely. So when we can't hear well, it's harder for us to be aware of kind of where we are and what's happening around us. Our ears process a lot of information directly to the brain that tells us very vital information about where we are. And what I mean by that is something as simple as, am I standing up right now or laying down or sitting down? Am I standing still or am I moving? So changes in the ear can affect our balance and our stability. What can we do about hearing health potentially as caregivers? Encouraging the person to visit an audiologist once a year. This will help get their hearing checked. Hearing changes tend to be really gradual over time and to the point where people actually aren't aware that it's happening. So these regular checkups can help catch a change that's happening that we haven't noticed. Similar to vision, we can look out for signs that hearing is changing or some hearing loss is occurring. This can include things like the person starting to speak louder than necessary, asking more and more for words or sentences to be repeated, thinking that people are mumbling when maybe you can hear them clearly and don't feel that they are mumbling, straining to hear. So we're starting to see leaning in more, favoring one ear over the other, so kind of that rotation behavior. And a really common sign is having volume settings higher and higher on the television or the radio or on the phone. This again, this gradual need to make changes to be able to hear. Also, if the person that you care for is using a hearing aid, it is really important that they use it consistently. So that's a point where you could potentially be a source of encouragement. Consistent hearing aid use can lower the risk of falls in seniors who use hearing aids. Our footwear is another thing that can affect our risk of slipping, tripping, and falls. And in Canada, in particular, we do experience winter weather, and so this is particularly important as well in the winter season when we have footwear that can grip ice and snow. So what can we consider when it comes to footwear? We have an image here that talks about some of the features of a shoe that will be supportive and practical. And we want to think about footwear both inside and outside of the home. Sometimes we think about outside, okay, it's slippery out, let's put on our good boots with some good traction. But inside the home as well, moving around, it's really important to think about what's on our feet or not. So in terms of what we're looking for in a good supportive shoe, we have to balance this with practicality and as well as personal preference. But here are some of the features that can help. One thing is you'll see in the diagram it says a high heel collar pointing to the back there. That's the part of the shoe that comes up on your ankle. And we want that back to come up high to provide more support around the ankle area. We don't want that to be an open back or really, really low for that support. Something else you can look for are closures on the shoes. Velcro can be really helpful, easy to get in and out of. Also for folks who may have mobility or dexterity challenges, Velcro can be helpful. Laces work as well. But having some sort of closure helps keep that shoe snug, so it's not slippery and creating a tripping hazard. We want preferably a low heel height and a comfortable insole. And the bottom of the shoe, the preference is that be a rubber sole and then it has some texture on it that again helps with grip. If you've ever seen a shoe that's really, really smooth on the bottom, that's just a slip and slide situation waiting to happen. So looking for some texture in that shoe. So what else can you do? As I mentioned, footwear, it's really supportive if there is some back. And again, this is going to be what's allowable for the person's situation. But kind of those floppy open back slippers that often are a source of comfort or familiarity to people can very much be a tripping hazard, especially on stairs. It is recommended as well that socks alone at home as we age can also be a slipping hazard. So some sort of footwear that has that rubber sole bottom is helpful for preventing falls. In wintertime outside, research has shown that traction devices, those grips that you can add on the bottom of your shoe while you're outside, have been proven to reduce falls. And those are devices that are pretty commonly available in stores and online, and that help out in the snow and ice. What is important if using those types of devices is that they are not used indoors because then they become kind of like skates. So those are strictly for outdoor use. And again, thinking about foot health and foot care, we can also help encourage the person you care for to have their feet checked. by a healthcare provider. Another important area is medications. Taking more than 4 medications and taking certain medications that, for example, that are supposed to relax you, that help you sleep or improve your mood, can increase the risk of falling. What can we do about medications? Um, An important tool is medication review. And this can usually be done by a pharmacist, or sorry, with a pharmacist, where they'll work with you and or the person you care for to review the medications they're taking, looking at how those medications may be combined with each other, how it might affect them, whether it might be adding to dizziness or others, and if there's kind of any changes that they might recommend that still takes into account their health care. Keeping an up-to-date list of all medications that a person takes that includes prescriptions, over-the-counter medications like stuff you'll buy off the shelf for a headache or a cold and flu, as well as supplement and vitamins is important to track. There are many different medication tracking tools available that can be used. And we wanted to highlight that the Ontario Caregiver Organization has great resources for tracking these in their healthcare journey binder. And you can see a picture of that resource on the screen. You can also discuss medication side effects with the person's healthcare provider and pharmacist. So if the person you care for is taking medications and they seem to be experiencing side effects like dizziness, changes in their sleep, changes in their thinking, or experiencing new confusion, these are things to raise with their healthcare provider. It's also so important that medications are taken as prescribed, kind of when and how. So if the person that you care for has difficulty taking medications correctly, pharmacists may be able to provide support. So this is a conversation that you can have with the pharmacist. For example, they can organize medications into pre-filled pill packs for a daily and weekly taking of medications. So pharmacists can be a great resource if you have access to one in your community. The final area that we'll talk about tips with are modifications or changes within our home. And we think about this broadly. This can be changes to the home itself, using equipment and using devices. All of these can potentially help you and the person you care for stay independent, move safely, and live longer at home. What is important is that kind of consider what an individual needs and that changes are tailored to that person. When we think about, when I say home modifications, that might sound really big. That might sound like a big, expensive renovation. And we want to share that there is a range of things, including adding some simple equipment or devices within the home. So really thinking about the space and what you and the person you care for need and some of the different options available. You may want to reach out for professional support. So you can contact your local public health unit to learn about resources available in your community. Another professional that can provide support is an occupational therapist. They can provide professional, customized home assessments. If you are having modifications done to the home itself or installing equipment, for example, grab bars, it is important that these be installed by an experienced contractor because these equipment are helpful when used properly and safely. We don't want to unintentionally create a hazard. And you can look into funding opportunities for costs related to modifications, equipment, and devices. There are funding options available at different levels, so potentially in your local community, at the provincial level, or at the federal level. And these do have different eligibility requirements and the ways that they fund. We'll give you an example. In Ontario, there is an assistive devices program through the Government of Ontario. There's also a home and vehicle modification program through March of Dimes in Ontario. Parachute has put together a list of current available programs and opportunities with information about who is eligible and how these work. It's also important if that we included information about tenant rights for people who rent their accommodations. We recognize that not everyone is a homeowner, and with that can come challenges with creating change in your living space. We can share that funding information resource after the presentation. It's also available along with the guide on our website. So just to wrap up the home modifications piece, there's I think the font is quite small in this image. It is available in the caregiver guide, but what we just want to point to is there are many things that could be considered in each of the different areas of the home. And this isn't to say that all of these things need to be done, but there's kind of a menu of options, which again, consider the needs of the person you care for, their lifestyle, and budget, and many different factors. And so again, you'll find this information in the guide. I'm going to pass it back to Claire now. One of the questions that came up most frequently from caregivers when we were gathering input on what should come in this resource is what to do if a fall happens. And so Claire is going to speak more about that.
Thanks, Stephanie. So yeah, as Stephanie mentioned, knowing how to safely help the person you care for if they fall is something that really emerged from caregivers who we consulted with in the development of this guide. And this is important because it's important for your safety and it's important for the safety of the person that you care for. When we were developing this guide, we heard from several caregivers who told us about injuries that they sustained, sometimes very serious injuries, when they were trying to lift the person they care for off of the floor after they had sustained a fall. And when we see someone fall, often our first instinct is to rush over and try and help them up. And that is completely natural. But trying to lift someone off of the floor can really put both of you at risk of further injury. And the best thing to do is really the hardest thing to do, and that is to check their condition first and then see how you can help. Don't try to lift them up off the floor. So today what we're going to do is, now that we've talked a little bit about prevention, we're going to talk more in depth about what to do if a fall happens. So if the person you care for falls, again, the first thing we want to do is resist the urge to get them up right away. So this may mean leaving them on the floor where they have fallen. We want to check if they are conscious and for any injuries they may have sustained. Importantly, we want to stay calm and reassure them. Falling can be a really scary experience, and as caregivers, as support people, we can play a really critical role in helping them stay calm, not panic, and reassure them that they're going to be okay. The next thing we want to do is with that person, you want to determine if they can get up by themselves. So, if they cannot get up on their own, so for example, if they are injured or if they are unconscious or they simply don't feel that they can safely get up, That is okay. Thing we want to do in that scenario is we want to call 911 for support. They can provide what is called a lift assist, where emergency services will come and lift the person off of the floor. They will then help assess if that person needs to go to hospital for follow-up care or can remain at home. Obviously, if the person is injured or unconscious, a visit to the hospital may be required in that scenario. So calling 911 if the person cannot get up is really a key first step. While you are waiting for emergency services to arrive, there are a couple of things that you as a caregiver can do to help that person. So if you are comfortable and if you can tend to any minor injuries that may have happened. You can help the person into a comfortable position. And you can use blankets and pillows to keep them warm and comfortable until help arrives. And again, you are that calming, reassuring presence in what can be often a scary situation for some people. So let's talk now about if the person can get up on their own. And there are a couple of steps that we want to take to support that person. And I'll go through each of these steps individually. Again, it is really important that at no point you are lifting the person. The person who fell should be taking these steps themselves and doing the work. I do want to caveat this as well with, it is really important, especially if the person that you care for, or even if you yourself, if you have mobility challenges or, certain injuries in the past, if you can't, for example, be on your hands and knees, it is really important to talk to a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist. They will be able to provide you with the best advice as to how to get up from the floor safely. So this advice may not work for everyone, but if these are evidence-informed steps to help someone get up off the floor safely. And as a caregiver, you can very much encourage the person you care for to practice these steps. We do have advice and diagrams in the guide for the care recipient that walk the person through how to get up safely if you're by yourself. And then we also have these tips here for caregivers if you are around and able to help the person up off the floor. So the first thing that we want to do, if someone has fallen, we want to, again, go through those steps of, checking to make sure that they're okay, that they're conscious. If they decide and feel that they can get up, what we want to do is bring a chair or a sturdy piece of furniture close by. And then we want to help the person turn onto their side with their legs bent. We then want to place ourselves behind the person and get a firm grip on their hips and help the person into a kneeling position so that they've got both hands on the chair. They may need to, from this position, they may need to kind of crawl themselves forward to the chair in order to get there. But then we want them to eventually get into a kneeling position where they've got both hands sturdily holding onto the chair or the other piece of furniture that we have. And you as a caregiver, again, you can help them position themselves. You can help them, you can verbally guide them through these steps. But again, we don't want you to be lifting the person. At various points throughout this process, it is also really helpful to check in with the person to make sure that they're feeling okay. So at this point, they got up from lying down to now kneeling. Are they feeling dizzy? Do they feel like they can continue with this process? If not, we want to take a pause, reassess. If they're feeling dizzy, then we want to pause and make sure that we're going really, really slowly, potentially lying back down and calling emergency services if we need to, because we don't want that person to rise up and then fall again. So then, as the next step, with their hands still holding onto the chair, The person then wants to bring one leg in front of them into a 90-degree angle. So for me, this would be me moving my right leg. It's my stronger leg. And then I'm going to push up with my right leg and with a firm and pushing up on the chair as well, push myself up into standing and then turn around and sit on the chair. And you, as a caregiver, you can continue to support that person by holding onto their hips. You can help them guide their leg, or you can just verbally coach them through that process. But again, we don't want you to be, lifting them right up off the floor. So after a fall has happened, and even if there appear to be no injuries, it is always really important to talk to someone about it. As we mentioned at the beginning of our presentation today, and I hope that we've imparted throughout, is that falls are not a normal part of aging, and it's really important to take falls seriously. It is recommended to discuss falls with a doctor or a nurse practitioner. Again, even if they appear to result in no injuries, falls can be that kind of warning signal that something may need to change. It may be linked to, as Stephanie mentioned, changes in certain medications or the person's overall health conditions. So if a fall happens, you as a caregiver can be that really important advocate for initiating that conversation with that healthcare provider and talking about potential changes. As we talked about, as well as caregivers, you are really critical for watching out for changes in the person's physical or emotional health. And after a fall has occurred, that still applies. You as a caregiver can really take note of any after effects. So if the person is experiencing any changes in how they typically think, feel, or act, we always want to follow up with a healthcare provider or a nurse practitioner about that. And certainly if the person does not get better as expected after they've experienced a fall, we certainly want to contact their doctor or nurse practitioner to follow up. And as I talked about when going through that process of helping someone up from a fall, and as Stephanie mentioned throughout some of the tips that she shared as well, a physiotherapist and occupational therapist can be great professional sources of support for helping you prevent and manage future falls. They can, for example, help with home modification. An occupational therapist certainly can help with home modifications. They can also help with, equipments, devices, and also, helping, providing additional tips for helping prevent future falls for you and the person that you care for. So we are excited to share this new resource that we have collaboratively created with caregivers, caregiving organizations. And this resource, which is called the Caregiver's Guide to Fall Prevention, puts together all of the information that we have covered today and more. And it is now available on the Parachute site at this link here. And as I mentioned, it has been built very collaboratively with caregivers, the Ontario Caregiving Organization, Caregiving Matters, and Family Caregivers of British Columbia. And the reason that we created this resource is because many fall prevention resources, and there are many that exist, are intended either for the older adults or healthcare professionals. We know that caregivers play such a critical role in fall prevention, and there's a real lack of resources for caregivers. So we are hoping that this resource now provides caregivers with the information and support that they need to prevent falls. And I wanted to share a little bit about how we developed this resource. So our first step in developing it was really to understand the needs of caregivers. So what do caregivers in Canada need to know about fall prevention? How is fall prevention affecting their caregiving role, affecting their lives? So we launched a survey that went to caregivers across Canada. We received 212 responses, and we really gained incredible insights into caregivers' experiences and needs for fall information, as well as the design, layout, and accessibility of the resource as well. And I just wanted to share that, the survey allowed us to understand how caregivers are thinking about falls and the risk of the person they care for falling. And interestingly, from the survey results, we found that caregivers are spending an incredible amount of time worried about falls. So 28% said that they think about the person they care for falling often, so either weekly or a few times a week. And an additional 43.5, so 44% said they think about the person they care for falling very often, so daily or almost daily. And this reflects what we see in other research as well, that many caregivers are fearful that their care recipient will fall. And this is particularly true if a care recipient has fallen already. So very quickly, I'll just walk through and highlight some of what is available in the guide. So we have lots of information, tools, and resources that cover understanding someone's risk of falling, strategies for preventing falls, again, that information about what to do if a fall happens. And we also have some information about how to start a conversation about falls and fall prevention, and then information about building a care team. So we have a few different kind of key tools in the guide. So the first is a personal fall risk assessment, and this is a short questionnaire that can be filled out by the person that you care for. You, as a caregiver, can also complete it yourself to understand your risk of falling. And the intention is to retake this every year to see how the score trends. And this can give you and the person you care for just a great baseline understanding of what is your personal fall risk. For some people, it can be a great kind of segue into having a more in-depth conversation about it as well. As I mentioned, we have lots of different tips and practical strategies. Stephanie mentioned quite a few of them today, but we also have lots of tips around movement, physical activity, staying hydrated, blood pressure management, and more. We also have tools that help you with weekly, monthly, and annual reminders and for progress tracking as well. As mentioned, we do have lots of different tools for what to do if a fall happens, how to document information around a fall if it does happen. That can be particularly useful for supporting that conversation with your care team. So documenting all of the information that may have led to the fall can help really identify potential changes and initiate that conversation with that care team. As mentioned, we have a conversation guide as well that incorporates lots of different advice, stories, and tips from caregivers. And that was really critical in building this guide, is letting the caregivers lead that section and provide their own experiences and advice to other caregivers as well. And then we do have a list of professionals who can help in supporting you and your care recipient with fall prevention, how to access them, do you need a referral? And then we also have a list of caregiving organizations as well. Lastly, I did just want to mention that, fall prevention, as we mentioned at the beginning, is just one of Parachute's priority areas. Injury prevention is for all ages, from infants to older adults. So please visit our website at any time, and you can access lots of different injury prevention topics online. So I will pause there for any questions, and I'll just take down my slides.
Wonderful. Thank you, Claire and Stephanie. That was amazing. So much information, beautifully delivered. If folks have questions, please put that into the chat box. We've got a few minutes now where we can work through a few. I'm going to kick things off though with one, just as you were talking about how you worked towards creating this guide, and it seems like there's a lot more for folks to look at once they download it and take a look. Was there anything really surprising or unexpected that you saw when you did the survey to inform the creation of the guide? Maybe Claire, I'll turn it to you first and then Stephanie.
Yeah, sure. So when we launched the survey, I think what was really surprising to us was just how much caregivers were really emphasizing the importance of knowing how to help someone if they have fallen. As I mentioned when I was talking about that, we heard several stories about caregivers who injured themselves when trying to lift someone up. And obviously, as a caregiver, the last thing you want is to sustain an injury and yourself then potentially need someone else stepping in to care for you. So it creates this big spiral. So we really wanted to shine a light and make sure that caregivers felt really well supported in knowing how to safely help in that scenario because for many caregivers it's commonplace and there's that need to know how to support someone and as we highlighted as well it's really natural it's the most natural thing in the world to want to immediately jump forward and try and get that person up off the floor. And that can really put both the caregiver and the person they're caring for in further risk of injury. So, doing the hard thing and checking that they're okay first and then kind of progressing through those steps slowly is really important. So we really wanted to bring that forward in the guide and make sure that that information was available for the caregiver. And then we also have an action plan for the care recipient that walks through. So, for example, if the person you care for lives alone, there's a whole action guide that walks through the steps of how to get up by yourself. And that could be really helpful for giving you as a caregiver some peace of mind, knowing that the person you care for is able to get up by themselves if they do fall.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I think we're always looking for really practical tips and resources, and I think this guide has really nailed it when it comes to that. And there's a comment around, that this notion that we're talking about in supporting, not lifting, but
Mhm.
supporting somebody to help themselves stand up. And it isn't as easy as we're talking about, sometimes this could take a while. And
Yeah,
sometimes, like Claire mentioned, you might start and be like, actually, no, we're not going to do this. This isn't safe. And we're going to stop and we're going to wait for some trained help.
yeah,
And one person, I think, or one piece I think that's really important to emphasize that we do often at OCO is it's okay to call emergency services. I hear this all the time where caregivers are like, I don't want to bother anyone. They have more important things to do. And this is a part of what fire and ambulance are doing all the time. It's a part of their job. And so it's normal and it's encouraged to reach out
exactly.
and ask for that support.
Yeah, we really want to encourage, we do not want people unnecessarily putting themselves at risk. So if at any point through that process of attempting to get up, it doesn't feel safe, then stop and call emergency services. As you're saying, Katie, that's what they're there for. And as someone else has kind of alluded to in the chat, it's also really important to follow up about falls. Even if they appear to have resulted in no injuries, if the person gets up and says, "Oops, I just tripped," or it happens. We still want to pay attention to those incidents and make sure that we're following up with healthcare providers where we can because they can be indications that something is changing, something may need to be reassessed. Whether that's, moving that rug, taking that rug away, or talking to a healthcare provider, revisiting your medications. Like there are lots of different things that may be contributing to why someone has fallen. It's not always straightforward.
Yeah. Yes, we've seen a couple of questions and comments in the chat about should I report? And for those that might not know, the Lynn was CCAC and is now Ontario Health at Home, if you're trying to figure out that acronym. And yes, we want to be sharing this with your medical team and your home care support team, because as has been mentioned throughout this presentation, these are indications that there's health status changes and it might need an increase in support. It might need medical follow-up. So we want to be documenting and sharing this information with the folks that are supporting the people that are maybe prone to or have taken some falls. So there's a question quickly here. We've only got a few questions or minutes left, but there's a question about how ambulance prioritize a call when they get so many calls. I'm happy to answer that, but maybe Stephanie, I see you've unmuted, so I'll let you respond.
Yeah, I'll let you add after Katie, but I did want to share that we've been having conversations with fire services and hearing that this is something that they are taking on more and more. So as we know, when we call 911, there's the three first responder groups. There's the ambulance, there's the police, there's the fire. So what we're actually hearing is more and more that fire services are attending and doing these lift assists. And it is one of those kind of great roles that they can take on where it suits their ability. If a person needs additional medical assistance, of course, that's where EMS and other providers come in. But we are hearing those numbers going up in terms of fire being the ones to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. And fire do have medical training as well. So they're not going to just sort of lift up dad and say, okay, now we're going to wait for an ambulance to come. And things are often re-triaged, is what we would say. So if fire came and picked them up and they did find there was some other health issues, they might be able to re-triage paramedics to come at it quicker if that's needed. Or maybe they assess the person and find that paramedics don't need to come. So it's really individualized, but yes, as Stephanie mentioned, fire is doing a lot more of this kind of work in your community. Yeah, a lift assist is great language to use. So you would still call 911. Mom has fallen. We can't lift her. We need a lift assist. And they'll ask you all the relevant information. They'll ask you questions about her health. Is she awake? Is she breathing? Is there pain? And they'll dispatch the appropriate service to come to your house. And there's so much more information. It is amazing information. Thank you for sharing that in the chat. And I want to thank everybody for, chiming in and providing feedback to other people's questions and comments throughout. I think this is one of the beautiful things about bringing together caregivers in a webinar is we can get some hot tips from each other as well. This guide is truly a welcome addition to the many caregiver resources that are out there. And so we will be sending folks the guide. We'll send you the slides and the recording as part of our post-webinar email. And we'll take a look through the chat box as well to see if there are additional resources like the My Healthcare Journey binder that was mentioned that we can include for folks as well. We'll make sure that we include both the English and the French resources for folks. But at this time, I really just want to say thank you. Thank you, Claire and Stephanie, for joining us today and providing us with this really detailed, rich, and practical information on how caregivers can prevent falls and also how we can support folks in that moment.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, OCO, and thank you everyone who attended today.